Yo guys, alright, I'm back. So we're going to be continuing the NeetG manager. We've already set up the variables. Now let's get to the code part of this. So for this, in the start function, we're going to have to actually do the loop for when we spawn the objects, spawn the NeetFish. So we'll start off by initializing. So we initialize our list right here of the NeetFish. And we set the array length to be of starting population. So we make this an array of size starting population, which we set to 20 in the editor. Next, same thing for the networks. Because these two need to be of the same length. Okay, so this is where we begin to create our functions. Our first function is going to be the starting networks function, which is the function that basically creates our starting population. So for the starting networks function, which is the function that creates our initial networks, we're going to do and then we do a for loop that goes to the starting population. And then from there we do all neat networks I equals new neat network input nodes, output nodes, hidden nodes. Let me make sure how the neat network gets initialized. Input nodes, output nodes, then hidden nodes. Oh, yeah, input nodes, output nodes, then hidden nodes. Perfect. That should initialize our first 20 20 neat networks, or how many neat networks we specified for our starting population. Okay, so we call that right in the you guys, apologies right here. This should not be being called in the update. We do not want to create this. We do not want to initialize our networks every frame. That would be really messed up. So let's Control X, cut that out. I hope people are following along, because if they didn't see that, it's gonna cause some crazy errors. Guys, remember, cut this out from the update to fix this. Okay? Cut this out from the update and paste it into the start. And so this is how we should have it after fixing the getting this out of the update error. Because that would be really bad if somebody is creating a starting population every update frame. That'd be crazy. But alright, so we should be in the start function. We're starting off in our code in the start function. This is whatever happens when the genetic manager first starts, when the first update frame is called. So right here we call the starting networks function, which will create our initial network. Alright, and then once we do have the initial network created, in the future we're going to have it made to where it starts from the best of the population, and we could have a saved fish and all that. But right now we want to get the bare bones, so we're going to just leave it at this. So the next thing we want to do is spawn our bodies. So we have our networks for each fish. Now we want to spawn our body for each fish. And also, if you guys remember, in our fish controller, we pass input, output nodes, and initialize a network. Now that we have our networks set up already, and now that we have our 20 networks or however many networks we specify, we no longer have to have the output, input, and hidden nodes in the fish controller. So we will take that out once we're ready. But for right now, we'll get to that. So the next function will be the spawn body function, which is used to connect the brains to the body and actually instantiate the fish object. We should be commenting these. And we'll do that right here. This is going to be creates initial group of networks from starting population integer. Alright, and then let's see if that's working. Well, I'm going to get rid of this. There we go. Okay, so we're going to copy that, paste that into this, and we're going to do create initial group of fish game objects, integer, and matches fish object to their network names. Pop that up. Alright. You know what? It's like I've been in Python for a bit, and I like the doc strings in Python. So I'm just going to do something similar to that. For some reason, my editor isn't like it's just not set up right for Unity, and it's probably because right now I'm in Manjaro, and before this code along, I had some issues with the operating system, because it's rolling release, so you have to keep updating it, and I kind of didn't update it for a little while and left my system, and so when you come back and update, you usually get some funky issues. Alright, so let's do the spawn body function next. And then for the spawn body function, basically we're just instantiating the bodies in a for loop and matching the bodies to the brain. So same type of for loop that's going to the population, the starting population. And then here. So we're going to spawn the objects in random positions to begin with. And we're going to get those positions from the camera. So the reason why I have the camera set up the way I do is because we are going to spawn objects in a random spot within the camera. Okay? And this is how we do it. So right now we are defining a vector3 position for where our object should be spawned. Our fish prefab should be instantiated. do random dot value, and then random dot value, and then 10, because we're going to spawn the objects on the 10 on the z-axis. However, for right now, I might leave it at 0, and then we'll come back and see how it's looking. So this value might change in the future. So, but we get that position. Now we have a vector 3 on the random x and y, and we have 0 set to 0. And so we then do, and we go get our camera dot main dot view viewport to world point. Okay, so our viewport is our camera, and we get a world point from our viewpoint, which we're looking at. Alright. So we pass it the random vector 3, and we get a random position from that within our viewport. There we go. Now we have to instantiate our object and set our object to the neat fish. Okay. So we have to, basically we're filling the list of the neat fish now, of the game objects. The autocomplete is now set up, which is great. And that should be good. Next we will do, so basically over here what we're doing is we get the neat fish prefab, which is the prefab we have saved above. We get the position, which we got right here, the random position that was within our camera. And now we get the and then we get the rotation. We get transformed our rotation, which is just the rotation that is already designated of the object that we're on. So whatever object the neat G manager is attached to, which is the default right now because we reset it. So we're gonna do a get component. So from so we instantiate the object, then we access the game object, and then we do a get component on that because we want to get the fish. The fish's controller. In the fish controller, then we want to access the network variable, which is the variable we want to access the network variable and set the all neat networks, the network to match with the network variable. So with our manual creation of this, when we had a network, my network variable in the fish controller, and we set that my network variable through instantiation in the beginning in the awake function. However, now that we have a list of all the neat networks that we're going to be using, and we want our genetic manager to manage all the neat networks, we will simply we have the list of neat networks, and we'll simply assign that with networks that are already created to the fish controller instead of having to instantiate the network within the fish controller. So I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing, but yeah. I guess what you can really look at it is that when the body and the brain are not being spawned together, the brain is going to be stored for generations after generation, while the body is going to die and come back every generation. Okay, so the body is going to be spawned, and so that's why we have them independent of each other. Then the body is going to spawn, and the brain is going, that was already alive, the brain is going to be placed within the body. Alright. I do apologize because I'm repeating words. Again, I don't have this written down. I'm just trying to explain it off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm messing it up. Not the best explanation off the top of my head. So if you guys want a more detailed explanation, please let me know and I will make a tutorial. A tutorial with answers to the specific questions you have. So there we go. So right now we have the controller gets its brain in this line right here, okay, when we spawn the body. However, we also want the controller to know exactly which index its brain is, okay? So this I value right here, we want the fish controller to keep track of this I value for so that it knows exactly where which brain it has. So when it dies, it can let the manager know of its fitness and what brain it had. Okay, so we will from here. First of all, we'll save and see if there's any errors. And there are. So let's finish these errors and then we'll continue. So where we have rotation right here. Yes, the R should not be capital there. So it's rotation with a lowercase r. Alright, perfect. And these are just warnings letting you know that we have variables that are assigned but never used. Okay, so there are no errors. Let's go back to our code now. So we have the we're finished with placing the brain inside the network, but we want to keep track of what index brain we have. So we're going to go to our fish controller and we're going to add a variable called brain. Give me 1 second, guys. Alright, we'll get a brain index and we'll leave that blank for now. And let me make sure that this is lining up with my reference code. In my reference, I call it my brain index, and honestly, I would like to keep that. So we're gonna call it my brain index, and so that looks good. Now we will come back to our neat G manager, and we will copy this line of code right here. Okay. We're gonna paste it right above, and we're gonna do dot my brain index equals I. And so with that, we have the index stored of where our brain is located in the G manager. And when each and this just helps us in the future when the fish controller dies. Alright, so the spawn body is done, and now the brain is done, the spawn brain is done, and the spawn body is done. So it's time for us to put that in the start right here. So now when we start, we should have the brains being spawned and the bodies being spawned. Okay, we might have to modify our code for the fish controller, but we should be able to see field cannot be void type. What did I do? Ah, why did I? Oh my god. Public int brain index, not public void. This is not a function. This is a integer variable. Apologies, everyone. Sorry about that. So now that that's done, we will go back to our new G manager and do the spawn body function. And everything is looking good. Let's delete this fish. And let's see if the bodies get spawned or what's going on. It seems they are getting spawned, however, they are not in the right location. As we see, they are not being displayed in the graph. Let's see why that is. We'll move to scene, get out of 2D view, and look at this. Since we're getting the viewport, the position from the viewport, it's getting spawned on the right location, but on the wrong z-axis because we put 0 for the z. So it stays on the 0 for the z is right here. You know, it's exactly where the camera is on the z. Even though our camera is not on the 0 globally, it goes on they get spawned on the local z for the camera, which is, you know, right here. So to fix that, and that's an easy fix, we're just going to go down to where we spawn the object, where we get the position for the spawn, and change that to 10, which originally that's what I had in my reference code. However, I wanted to see why we had that. So now we know. So we'll clear that, close this, clear that, and we see that there's no errors. Those are errors because I was having the editor playing while changing code. And we press play, and yeah, it looks like they are being spawned, and they're being spawned in not the right location still, because our camera is at the -20. We wanted 20 what is it called? I don't really know what the 20 z-axis ahead. I don't really know what their measurement is, like the distance. But all right, again, easy fix. We just move it back to 20 instead of 10. And now that's clear, we press play. And there we go. It looks pretty good. We get some that aren't moving at all, which is interesting. But we get a lot of good movement going on. However, we don't know, well, we do know, but our fish controller still has the input, output, and hidden nodes, and the instantiation from the input, output, and hidden nodes. Okay, so we have to change that. However, we can see that the fish clones are being spawned from the G manager, and they're given a brain, which is the reason why they're moving. And some of them are very different. Let's go to the scene view just to see how everything is looking. You see, even the ones that are staying still are moving. They simply are spinning in circles. So there's movement on all of them. All right. Now that that's done, we're going to go back to our G manager, and actually we're going to go to our fish controller and fix the input, output, and hidden. We no longer need that in our fish controller. So right here, we will erase that. And then in the awake function, we will get rid of the instantiation of the network, because our network is given to us by the G manager now. So everything remains the same, except that we get rid of the also awake is not called before the first, so let's get rid of that comment as well. Yeah, awake is called before the start. So yeah, this, now that we don't have the instantiation of the network in the fish controller, let's run this again and see if everything is working. Everything should work exactly the same, and there should be no errors. Well, great. Let's see why that error is there. We obviously referencing input node somewhere, which is right here. Interesting. Yeah, we do need our fish to know exactly how many sensors it needs. So let's change this to the start function, and let's add back the private int input nodes, output nodes, and hidden nodes. But this time they're private, and we will assign them from the neat G manager. So we have those here. We go to our neat G manager, and right here we will simply copy over this line 1, 2, 3 times dot input nodes equals input nodes dot output nodes equals output nodes, and then dot hidden nodes equals hidden nodes. And now we have a store of our input, output, and hidden nodes that we get from the G manager, which takes care of the sensor error. And also, if we ever in the future want to calculate how many output nodes, hidden nodes we want, or output nodes, hidden nodes we have, then we have that stored as well. So, but yeah, it's not that big of a problem. However, in the future, I do want to then implement a usage for these two. I don't want to just have variables that are assigned but not being used. Of course. These have to be public. Sorry about that. I know I said that they have to be public because we're accessing them outside of the class of. Sorry about that. Alright. We press play, and hopefully everything is working. Everything seems to be working exactly the same. We have some that are just moving in circles, and we have movement similar. Everything is being spawned by the genetic manager, and yeah, genetic manager is keeping track of what's going on. So this is a really good spot to be at. Again, another good spot. But now we have to implement a way to for the fish to die, and a way for the brain to evolve. Right now we have the first generation, which is spinning around in circles. However, there is no training happening here. This is just mindless movement. So now we have to begin to get ready to get the generations going. Okay, we don't even have a way to increment the generations yet. So let's see what's going on. This is a really good place to stop. So I'm gonna stop here actually, and I'll be back.